Animal Well. It's a beautiful, haunting, atmospheric, pixel-style game made by a single developer, Billy Basso. It's commonly described as a Metroidvania, with its dense map, areas locked behind quirky items, and non-linear exploration. What makes it stand out, however, is its puzzle elements. With comparisons to games like Fez, Tunic, and Outer Wilds, you know there's much more to this game than meets the eye. As the video title shows, this analysis will focus on Animal Well as a speedrun. Yes, that kind of speedrun, and we get through the game as fast as possible. Speedrunning's too hard, but I can't perform glitches. Yeah, that's exactly what I said before I noticed something peculiar. Something that made me think, is speedrunning also a puzzle? And here is where I'm going to give my super heavy post-game spoiler warning. Really, if you have not played the game, please go play it. It's a game where knowledge is your key, but it can also be a curse. As in, once you learn something, there's no unlearning it. At any time in this video, if the game or strategies interest you, and you'd rather learn more for yourself, by all means, click out and go play. It would mean so much more to me than a view or a like or any of that YouTube algorithm nonsense. This video is not explicitly a tutorial, but if you would like a tutorial, there's one by a player named Iggy, and it helped me out a ton. I'll link it down below in the description. Alright, with that out of the way, are you ready? 4, 3, 2, 1, let's get started. With a first playthrough and normal exploration, you'll likely find yourself going through the entire map, backtracking here and there to pick up items, which is common in Metroidvanias. There's entire sections to go through, where you only need to press one button, but you must go through several screens to do so. This is to be expected, and it gives the player a sense of adventure. It's fun, engaging, and it adds depth to an area. Maybe you found a seemingly impossible obstacle that made you use the items you had in creative ways. It causes you to stop and think, what do each of these items do? The game is non-linear after all, and it's not going to outright tell you if you have the item you need. But it's also not going to tell you how to solve the puzzle. If you can find a way to solve it, that's the right way. Did you learn how to do multiple bubble jumps in your first playthrough? Did you skip over entire sections with that knowledge? If you can do it, then it's a viable strategy. It's your strategy. People play differently, or acquire different items first, and have different ways to solve these puzzles with the tools they're given. To me, it taps into that childlike creativity of thinking outside the box, which makes sense, given that all of your progression items are toys. Just in case, I'm going to give a final spoiler warning. Once you make it to the credits, and after celebrating your victory, you're met with this clock, and then you take a stopwatch from a random squirrel, which lets you toggle a timer on or off in the corner of the screen. But why though? It may take you some time to realize what it all means, but even if you know or looked up a guide, you might say, I can't do that. Beat the game in 30 minutes? That's impossible. I don't speedrun. That was me. Absolutely no way anyone was getting me to speedrun another game. I'm an adult. I've got things to do, errands to run, social situations to avoid. But there's optional collectibles in there. Nah, I don't need them. I'll just get all the eggs. That'll be where I draw the line. The beauty of this game is knowing when to stop. Could be done after the credits and call it a day. I mean, I did beat the game. But I wasn't satisfied after the first credits. And I wasn't satisfied after getting all the eggs. Or the true ending. I wasn't even satisfied after achieving flight. And after all that, I still wanted more. more puzzles, more gameplay, more achievements, more challenges, more layers. And now here I am, making my very first video because I want to convince others that this game is gently coaxing new players to attempt speedrunning. Animal Well is a great game to try as a first speedrun, and it's great for those who love the game and want more out of it. If you pay attention, just like observing many of its puzzles, speedrunning too is set up like a puzzle, and the game gives you all the hints you need to start routing a path to your solution. You don't need to use glitches, or rely on RNG, or do wild level zips. The only thing required is your knowledge, and a little bit of skill. The lowest time set is 30 minutes. That's what the developer believes you can achieve. Do you believe in yourself enough to accept that challenge? Let's start assembling our puzzle pieces, with items and their uses, like the flute, and fast traveling with it. You likely found a few songs in your first playthrough, and you know what? You can use any of those songs as soon as you acquire the flute. You still need to find 8 eggs and unlock access to the animal heads, but the Top of the Well song you may have found? That could be super useful. Going fluteless is also an option. Death warping sends you back to the last phone you saved at, which skips a lot of backtracking. Earlier, I mentioned bubble jumping. The entire base game is set up to be completed by blowing a single bubble anytime you need a higher jump. You even get access to an upgraded bubble wand that makes jumping even easier. But infinite bubble jumping has been there all along, and it's surprisingly simple to do. Just press the use button and jump button at the same time. It's a lot like bomb jumping in Metroid, but easier to pull off. There's even vertical bubble jumping, which is a little harder to learn. How much of the game could you skip if you had access to the bubble first? What about the frisbee? You can throw it and hit switches, and maybe you learn you can stand on it. But did you know you can throw it and instantly ride it? How about wall jumping with it, when you don't have access to the bubble? If you only completed the first credits, or even the true ending, this might all be new information. But did you know it's hinted at if you attempted Layer 3 of the game? Do you remember the very first bunny in the tutorial area? Do you remember how to get to it? By bubble jumping. And single bubble jumps aren't going to work in this room. Even getting to the room requires a bubble jump. Or maybe a creative frisbee ride. I mean, the upgraded bubble wand is also useful here if you manage to find it, but in my perspective, this room helps show players how effective bubble jumping can be. Maybe that wasn't persuasive enough of a hint. How about the Spike Room Bunny? It's in a room that you'll likely access with the frisbee. There's various ways to get through this room too, but with the frisbee, it teaches you that you can instantly land on it as you jump and throw. What about that Floor is Lava Bunny, where you juggle multiple items in tight spaces and find the best path that works for you? Or how about the Map Bunny, where you had to backtrack all over the place to find totems, familiarizing yourself with the layout, and in the end, you're rewarded with a bunny. And a very helpful warp song. Nah, that's all just coincidence. It's just challenges. None of that relates to speedrunning at all. Alright then. Maybe I need a more visible guide. Something familiar. Something all players have seen, if they've made it to any save point. Flowers. They're everywhere. Especially these little yellow ones. They mostly show up around phones, and on the edges of rooms leading to a save spot. They would probably go unnoticed if the developer didn't mention this cryptic hint in a Reddit AMA. Allow the flowers to guide you. Well, of course. They lead to save rooms. That's how they guide players. There's no need to overthink it. But I did overthink it, and something in my brain clicked. These can be speedrun hints. I noticed while watching a run that these flowers are placed in such specific ways and are so common in routes that it's hard to pass off as just a coincidence. Let's use these 2 flowers as an example. There's a save room to the left, But these two flowers kind of stand out. One's bright, the other's faded, which is something I haven't seen anywhere else. If you choose to plan a speedrun route that needs the flute, you're gonna need eggs. And up here is an easy egg, and a room you'll likely need to go through. Normally, you can't bubble jump in a one-tile gap, but if you stand where the faded flower is, and blow a bubble towards the bright flower, you can jump up here with ease. Even if you come across this room with the frisbee instead, there's a perfect piece of the wall missing that allows you to throw the frisbee and jump up. With all the vines and geometry in place that prevents players from doing puzzles in certain ways, doesn't it seem like the skip was deliberately allowed? And maybe even encouraged? Here's one growing in the ice area, a place with no other flowers, not even one by the phone. Which makes sense, flowers don't grow in ice. The placement follows the guidelines. It's near a save room. But you can also use your little character's body here to deflect the water, keeping you from running all over the place to adjust cranks. If the developer didn't allow all this, you think it would have been patched out. What about this flower? Growing sideways out of the wall, like a dandelion sprouting through concrete. Save room down below? Check. Speedrun trick? Also check. You can pass the yo-yo straight through this glass and hit the button, without having to go through the gauntlet of the room above. Are you having trouble making it to the chameleon the way the speedrunners do? Not a problem. Here's a flower that's not even by a save room. Maybe the hint is you need to get through this door. But you need to go through several screens to do so. Or maybe not. From before, we know the yo-yo can go through things. With some help from a chinchilla, we can clip it through the floor. Down and around. And there you go. Speaking of the chameleon, remember that map bunny and its warp song I mentioned earlier? It warps you right under the chameleon boss room, and it's also the only bunny surrounded by yellow flowers. The game isn't done giving hints yet. I've mentioned the chameleon boss fight multiple times, but how do you skip it? Well, with this handy save phone, and a little conveniently placed food, and a perfectly accessible platform. It's almost as if the dev is saying, I believe in you, you've got this. Here's a little extra help if you need it. With enough practice, one can damage boost through the ghost with a bubble, and make it to the platform with health to spare. No pixel perfect setup needed. But now, you're at the flame, possibly with no yo-yo, or disc to break the glass. What now? What if I told you, you can break it with the flute? Neat, right? Almost as if the developer thought of this. Ever take this fish pipe from the dog area to that dark glowing area? It's a pretty nice shortcut. Too bad you can't get the yo-yo this way, and you need it to progress. Or can you? If you recall back to gathering eggs, there's a specific one, the sapphire egg. It's a little hidden, and you have to use the lantern to get to it. But what else can it teach you? Oh, you can jump through ghost birds. And where can that be used? Of course, jumping through the single bird blocking your progress. Isn't it convenient that there's a little ledge carved out right here, and it makes setting up this jump easy? With a little practice. Also pretty convenient that this other bird always spawns on the right side of the room, allowing you to fall past it and easily reach the yo-yo. This game is allowing the player to skip so much, so long as they have the knowledge to do so. Have you ever tried to throw firecrackers at those floating mice heads, even by accident? Well, let's see what it does. Oh. Huh. It makes them change direction. That's weird. Remember this room? It's a quirky little place, with a mouse head hitting a switch to change the platforms. Wait. Mice heads can hit switches? Well, how can we put these two pieces of information together and make it useful? Oh. Oh. Even after all that, who says you have to face that crazy ostrich? We haven't had to really beat any of the other bosses. Could that also be a hint? Could we just skip this whole area? Oh, let's use the slinky to hold down this button. And the yo-yo as we drop. And sure enough, success. Some of you have probably seen speedruns of this game, and a run might seem a little complicated to try. Do you have trouble juggling the dog? Well, don't juggle the dog. Make your own route, one that works for you. If you don't see the flute as useful, great. Use the phones to strategically death warp, and that saves you from gathering eggs. Don't want to get the frisbee first? Get the bubble. Can't damage boost your way to the chameleon? Well, there's an alternate route. But what about that last sprint from the dog? What then? Well, who says you have to swap the mock disc with the real disc? Why not just take the mock disc straight to the shrine? You can always get the real disc later. Tired of going through the tutorial? Why not skip it? Yep, if you walk right into the screen, grab the crank at a distance, and jump down to the water while holding right, you'll effortlessly fly up to the platform. Now, this is probably the most technical or glitchy trick I know of in a run, and it doesn't seem to have any hints connected to it. But the thing is, you don't even have to do it. The tutorial isn't that long. If you have the knowledge to do this, you don't need to be punished by going through the tutorial over and over. Oh yeah! There's a clock at the end of the true ending credits too. And it has its own set of figurines. Well, let's stop and think about what we gotta do. Collect 64 eggs, free the kittens, hatch a new manticore? No. We're not possibly doing that in a reasonable amount of time. But wait, what if I told you you only need 32 eggs to unlock the top? What if you could just play the Lynx's song instead of freeing the kittens? What if you could just use the first manticore to escape the well? It's not as hard as you may think. After practicing my own route for 30 minutes, I did a true ending run using that route as my base, and I winged the rest. You know, I ended up collecting every figurine from that true ending clock on my first attempt. Not only does all of this tempt you to try a speedrun, it preps you for deathless runs. When I first played and learned that the chest in this room could only be opened on a deathless run, I saw the stacks of skulls and went, nope, screw that, ain't happening. Then I started attempting speedruns, and I checked the room again out of curiosity. 3 deaths. And those were from me using death warps. I was able to do deathless on my first try at it, and the feeling of overcoming something that I previously thought was impossible, it was amazing. I'd love it if you use these hints to make your own speedrun path, one that works for you and your own skill set, that focuses on personal bests instead of comparing yourself to a leaderboard. As someone who's done a tiny bit of speedrunning, I couldn't possibly overlook how much passion and care went into this game to make it speedrun friendly for newcomers and veterans alike. And it still prioritizes play for a casual audience. The intro's countdown, the toggleable on-screen timer, the carefully placed geometry, the slight hints, the rewards, it's all there, inviting people to just try. It's clear to me that this game wanted to remind people that speedrunning can be a rewarding experience, where you don't have to aim to be the best of the best. It shows that speedrunning, not just this game, but any game, can be seen as a new puzzle to solve. There's routing, learning setups, and even coming together as a community to share ideas. It shows that everyone, from those who play casually to those who data mine, can work together to help one another enjoy a game. I mean, how else would you know of a hidden warp song that sends you straight to the main area? And it's up to you if you want to use that song or not. I haven't picked up speedrunning for a leaderboard in years, but I'm still familiar with the communities and culture. I know there can be a lot of rules to it. It may seem impossible to get a good time in a popular game. Maybe the community isn't welcoming. Maybe the run takes too much time and skill to learn. All of that work for no recognition. It can all be very overwhelming to even attempt a speedrun, and it's easy to fall into the mindset of, why bother? Why? Because you don't need to be the best to enjoy a game. Because you don't have to play the way others do. Because playing a game doesn't have to be a chore. Because you wanted to spend more time with the game. Because it's a game you wanted to replay. Because it's a game you grew up with. Because it's a game you love. Animal Well has reminded me to think like a child again, to be creative when faced with a challenging problem, to learn when I'm satisfied. But most of all, it's reminded me that speedrunning can still be fun.